One of the things that creates a lot of the emotional struggle and even shame that we experience comes from the ideas that we hold around something being wrong with us, that the way that we think or feel is somehow not normal, maybe even being damaged or broken. If you can relate to that, then today's video is for you. Welcome, I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you for joining me. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and just as I talked about in Sexual Assault Awareness Month, being able to bring awareness to the reality of what mental health is and the importance of mental health is really important to help reduce the shame and stigma that so many people still experience when it comes to emotional struggle. So the first thing I want to say is that mental health is just our emotional well-being, really. Just like physical health is our physical well-being, the state of our physical being, right? Now, there can be an illness physically or mentally. But mental health awareness, for me, is recognizing. Now, again, this is one of those things where you could ask different people and they're going to have a different perspective on it, depending on their own personal experience, depending on their involvement in mental health generally. But when I think about this, I think about it from the perspective of somebody who has had a lot of emotional struggle in my life, and also somebody who works in the mental health field and helps people that have a lot of emotional struggles and sometimes even mental illness. So mental health is not the same as mental illness. However, mental illness is also not something to feel shame around, or certainly something that there should be stigma around. Mental illness is very much the same as a physical illness. And there's no shame or stigma in having physical illness. There should be no shame nor stigma in having a mental illness. For the purpose of this video, what I want to share with you is something that I think is important for people generally to really understand. And that is that emotional struggle does not automatically mean mental illness. And that in part is important because there often is, unfortunately, still shame around mental illness. But it's also important because when we can recognize that emotional struggle is normal, then when we're experiencing it, we don't have as much fear around it. We also certainly don't have as much shame around it. So I really want to help normalize the fact that emotional struggle is a natural human experience. Now, the degree to which we struggle can vary, and on more on the extreme end can be mental illness. Still nothing to be ashamed of, certainly nothing that there should be stigma around. But struggling emotionally is completely normal. If somebody does not struggle emotionally at all around anything, I would be really concerned about that person. It could mean a number of things, one being just that they're in a really deep state of denial. But certainly it could mean something that is more mental illness related. So emotional struggle is completely normal. And one way that might help to think about this is when you think about grieving somebody that you love who has died. Now for the sake of this video, let's talk about somebody. Let's use the example of somebody that the relationship is relatively healthy. So not somebody who has abused you, not somebody that you have a long, really complicated history with, but a relationship that is overall pretty healthy, that has died, and you go through the grieving process. Grief is normal. There are a variety of thoughts and feelings and experiences that go along with the grieving process. There are ups and downs. You move forward, it feels like you move backward. All of that is a completely normal and natural part of the grieving process. It is not something to diagnose. It is not something to medicate on its own. Now, I want to be clear that there are times for some people, particularly if you've got a lot of other stuff that you're grieving around, a lot of trauma, that grief can become more difficult because it's not just about grieving the loss of this person, but it becomes complicated because there's a lot of other things that become kind of tangled into that grief. So under some circumstances, it could move into the realm of potentially another diagnosis or maybe needing medication for a period of time, whether that's maybe even sleeping medication or maybe ultimately depression or anxiety related medication. But generally speaking, the grieving process, all of it, the ups and downs and the challenges and the being fine one moment and then sobbing the next, not thinking about that person for a little while and then feeling guilty about that and that sending you into this spiral. Like, so much of that is completely normal. It is not mental illness. So when you're experiencing something difficult, like the death of somebody that you care about, it is normal to go through all of that emotional struggle, right? Okay. So when you have experienced childhood trauma, I would actually suggest that what you're going to experience is even more significant. Not necessarily that the feelings have to be much stronger, but the layers and the depth are likely going to be much more significant because there's so many pieces to it. So what you end up experiencing as a result of having childhood trauma is normal. It's normal. It's a normal reaction to a very abnormal and traumatic experience. So just take that in for a moment. Whatever you're struggling with is likely a very normal reaction to a very abnormal experience. So whether you're struggling with how you're feeling, with relationships, with trust, motivation, whatever it is, that is normal. Now, it can, depending on the severity of it, how long it goes on, the ways that it's impacting your life, it can certainly move into what would be considered or labeled as mental illness, because that would be like a diagnosis, that would be prescription medications. Still nothing at all to be ashamed of, nothing that should have stigma around it. But the experience of having things related to depression or anxiety, all of that is normal under the circumstances. And what I really want you to be able to take from this is really recognizing when you are doubting yourself, when you are berating yourself because you think that if you were just stronger, you wouldn't struggle, or that you shouldn't still be struggling because it happened a long time ago, or it's taking you longer to heal than you think it should. Come back to the reality that the way that you're struggling is normal. The fact that it takes a long time to heal that is normal. The fact that you continue to struggle after you feel like you've been doing pretty well for a while, that is normal. So really normalizing the reality of emotional struggle after experiencing childhood trauma. It is normal, absolutely normal to struggle in a variety of ways, and even significantly struggle in many ways. That is all normal. There's not something wrong with you. You're not broken. You, as a human, are not damaged. Yes, damage is done, but you are not, as a human, damaged. You are dealing with the reality of what it means to be a survivor of childhood trauma. Now, I want to be clear that just because it's normal doesn't mean that you don't need support or that you don't need therapy. Grief is normal. It doesn't mean that you have to do it on your own. It doesn't mean that you should just stick it out, toughen up, and get through it. Absolutely not. I wish more people who are experiencing grief would seek out professional support or even group support, because grief is hard. And having support through that, understanding what's happening within you, can be really, really helpful in helping you move through it in a more easeful way, not easy way, but easeful in terms of how you're talking to yourself about it, trying to tell yourself that you shouldn't be struggling, reinforcing shame around the fact that you're struggling. And the same is true for being a survivor of childhood trauma. Yes, the symptoms, the struggles are normal. And seeking help and support and giving yourself the time and space that you need to heal, we need to normalize that too. We as individuals, as survivors, we need to accept that that is the reality. And certainly society needs to understand that as well. There is nothing wrong with you. However you struggle, whatever that looks like, it makes sense that you struggle. And you deserve to have support. You deserve to have help. You deserve compassion from others, and maybe most importantly, from yourself, both in the struggle and in the healing process. So for this Mental Health Awareness Month, let it start with you and yourself, being compassionate, being understanding, doing the things that you need to do to take care of yourself, whatever that might mean, whether it's seeking support or giving yourself time to rest, to set a boundary, whatever that is, because your mental health matters, and how you view your mental health, how you view your struggle and your experience has a huge impact on how you feel overall, and certainly the shame that you experience. I'd love to hear from you. What came up for you as I shared the things that I shared? Could you see yourself in it? If you're still watching this, I'm guessing you probably did. Your experience matters. Your struggle matters. You're not broken. You can heal, and you deserve support in doing that. If you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to do so, and then click the bell for notifications. And if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up so other people can more easily find it. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for helping reduce the shame and stigma around what it means to be a survivor and what it means to struggle. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.